You are listening to the Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Totally Drunk, Spider, and Slambo.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight we have episode 103. We'll be talking about what the pros have been saying about the PTR changes, which are surely going to change up the meta, preferably for the better. But, you know, we all know how balance updates go, so I'm sure it might be like 2 more weeks, and then people will complain all over again. But that's besides the point. Death to Double Barrier. Welcome whatever our new overlords are going to be at that point. But we will update you on everything that has been going on with the Houston Outlaws, because the sale is official after all of this time. And we're also going to take a closer look at all of the latest roster movements, which kind of calmed down a little bit, but there were still some pretty major sign-ins out of, you know, the ones that we did get this week. So before we get into the news and introduce you to my guests tonight, let me quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show. And of course, I have to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, we have another one of our community members. So please welcome Anura. Anura, thank you so much for being here tonight. Always good to bring additional people onto the show. How's your past week been?
It's been good, dude. I've been playing a lot of the Pokemon, Sword and Shield. I've been enjoying that a lot. Just doing school and hanging out.
Absolutely. So for those that aren't familiar with you, can you give a little bit of background in regards to Overwatch League, or, you know, things you've done on your social media? Because I know, like, you, like, when I was talking to you, like, I know you were kind of known for one thing in particular, which kind of leads into a lot of, like, off-season moves, so to speak.
Yeah, so around last year there was a rumor about King Michael, right? And he he was rumored to have the spreadsheet of all of the roster's movements. So I thought it was a funny thing to I thought it was funny to become Michael's spreadsheet and just follow him around and just tweet everything that I was like, oh yeah, I know about that, and just like about how he left me and stuff. I don't know. It was just a fun time, and then it really just got me into the Overwatch League community, and then I kind of just built something from there, and I just love talking about Overwatch League now, and I love the community, so I thought I should try something new.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump into the news from this week. So obviously one of the bigger things that we have right now, just in general Overwatch, is we do have a new update that hit on the public test realm. And this was a couple of hours before I actually sat down with Ed to record Heroes Never Die this past Wednesday. And there are a ton of balance updates, primarily revolving around the different shield tanks within the game. So the changes could definitely see the death of the double barrier meta that has kind of been plaguing pro play here. But, you know, it wasn't very long before we got to see a couple of, like, PTR pugs popping up from some of the pro players. A lot of, you know, some of the bigger names were posting their thoughts on social media, over on their Twitter. You know, kind of basically just, like, venting about, you know, the current meta, or, like, the changes that were being made. So, like, for instance, Seagull was mentioning how, you know, they were buffing armor, but they aren't nerfing Brig, who already had some of the most absurd healing and armor gen in the game. And then, you know, we saw, like, a couple of videos, like, Pharaoh was in with Seagull, and they were, like, kind of testing the survivability of Orissa's shield now that it doesn't have as much health. And it turns out that Roadhog only takes 4 shots in order to break Orissa's shield at this point. So basically across the board, they nerfed shields outside of Winston's. So it's nice that the dev team listened to the community in some regards. But I know DeFran was like kind of poking fun at like he's like it's time to pop the f off, but he's kind of banned right now, so might be a little bit there. But I know some other players were pretty critical in regards to Orisa, primarily because the berry wasn't so much an issue as much as her fortify, which right now really kind of makes her unkillable. A lot of people are looking for them to like scale back the damage mitigation from that particular ability. But have you had an opportunity to hop on the PTR as of yet to check out these changes firsthand?
So I haven't checked them out yet, but I was watching some streams with the pro pugs for PTR, and I can just say one thing is that it looks a lot faster. Like everything looks a lot faster. And Orisa's still going to be in meta. That's just Orisa's going to be in meta no matter what, because that upgrade to from was it 10 seconds to 8 seconds for fortify is a huge buff. She's basically unkillable at this point.
Yeah, Samino basically tweeted that her Fortify, which you guys buffed, makes her 800 HP, 400 of that being armor with crowd control immunity. So he's looking at, hopefully they'll scale it back to 20%, and at that point he feels like that would be more in line. But we're still, we don't know what the ETA is in regards to this getting pushed to live. We might end up seeing like maybe 2 weeks of testing, which seems to be kind of the norm at that point. But this is probably going to hit maybe before like we have the Winter Wonderland coming back into the game. But regardless of that, obviously with such a long kind of off-season period, the meta is going to be different, between the Overwatch League going into the World Cup and now into, like the Shanghai Invitational that's coming up at the end of the month as well. So, that might actually be our first look potentially at what this new formed meta is going to be. But for now, definitely go check out the Pro Pugs to see all of the shenanigans that are happening on that front. Now, speaking of the pro scene, there's been a little bit of news on the contenders front, and there is another academy team that has decided to go on hiatus, this time being XL2 Academy. So basically, as of now, all of their players, all of their coaching staff have become free agents, and this is the fourth time we've seen an academy team basically go on hiatus or disband this year alone. We also had, like, Energy Esports earlier this year, Mayhem Academy, Eternal Academy, and, Guangzhou was kind of in the same boat, but they eventually picked up T1W over in China. And, we got some news on that front later on in regards to a call-up. But it seems to be a common theme that's happening more and more often. Like, there was even talk about potentially Envy even calling it, or packing it in at this point. But it looks like they've kind of thought that through again. Looks like they've been doing, like, open tryouts and might go a little bit more on the budget side on that front. But this is a team in XL2 who finished as runner-ups this past season in the North America West. They were also, top 6 in the Gauntlet, which was that major inter-regional competition with a lot of the playoff teams throughout the world. And this has been a playoff team every single time that they have competed in contenders, with 3 top 4 finishes to their name. So kind of a better track record than the main roster when it comes to the playoffs on that front. But you look at this roster, and, there's some pretty notable names on here. You have KSP, Buds, who's been around the game, since the beta days. But we really haven't heard too much about potential call-ups or signings with the Overwatch League outside of Bianca, who, at one point was rumored to be signing with the New York Excelsior. But there was a signing that was made by NYXL earlier this week that might put a kebab on that, might squish it outright, because they did go out and they signed Hotba. So Bianca might still be LFT at this point.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I think it's I think it's really sad to see what's going on with the tier 2 community right now because a lot of people are they're trying to get to Overwatch League, and tier 2 is literally supposed to be the feeder place for that, but there's just not enough help, I would say, by Overwatch League. They could do so much more, not even like money wise, but like just support wise, as in like tweeting about it, like hosting it, doing anything, putting it on the Overwatch League channel, just something to get more people to go watch and go support it. And I hope this is a wake up call for the Overwatch League because they need to change something up.
Yeah, there's been a couple of times where we've seen like a Twitch embed like being placed in a launcher. That's only happened like once for contenders, and we did see a pretty noticeable bump in the viewership at that point. But another thing that used to happen in the past was the ability for some of the players to actually stream some of their matches. I remember at one point, Siegel kind of had a stream team, which was Calvin and the Chipmunks. And this is something that, he actually talked about on his stream here recently. And, there were times when, you'd have like 30,000 plus people just tuned in into whatever matches that Siegel was playing at the time. So, we'll still get an eyes on the product. Granted, it was through his channel and not necessarily like the main channels, but there's still a lot that can be done to help promote it outside of the community's effort, which there has been a ton of, because we have seen a lot of community members like starting their own social media in regards to just coverage, letting the results whenever it happens, outside of sites like over.gg, which we've all kind of become accustomed to using over the years. But just having it hosted on the Overwatch League page whenever we have contenders or open division or anything like that would be an absolutely huge asset for the tier 2 team. But it would also help if people didn't bicker so much about money and demanding to get paid in certain regards. There's just been a lot of murmurs about that on the competitive Overwatch Reddit. A ton of drama, which is nothing new for the tier 2 scene as a whole. But it's kind of grim right now. We keep seeing these academy teams backing out or just folding outright. And at one point there were a lot of rumors like maybe all of these Overwatch League teams would need to field an academy team. That was squashed to not be true at all. And at this point, it's really hard to just kind of get a sense of what's going to be left. Like, I don't want to say like the tier 2 scene as a whole is kind of like left in shambles, but if you're not in Korea, there's just not as much there. So I don't know if they just need to feed more money into it, if we need to see more third-party tournaments, but then you get into the whole thing with like needing licenses to run these tournaments. They're very strict when it comes to like sponsorships for tournaments or just players or teams. Something needs to give at some point, and you would just hate to see like one particular aspect of the pro scene just kind of dissolve. And it just seems like at this point, like, we just keep seeing more dominoes falling in regards to the path to pro, and it's really a damn shame at this point.
It's just there's so many good like talents that haven't even been discovered yet. We're gonna talk about Paintbrush later, but he was founded from Mayhem Academy, which is later like no longer a thing. But there's so many just people that if they get good coaching, gets good a good structure, they can become a pro player. And it's with these contenders teams, these academy teams, you need that structure to help people improve. And now that it's going away, I think there could be a huge drop into just about how much players can like just improve and really become stars in the Overwatch League.
Yeah, like, are we gonna get to the point where they're like, okay guys, we're gonna have a practice season like they did with Open Division?
Right.
You would hate to see that at that point. But moving on, we do have an update on the Houston Outlaws, specifically the sale of the team. There was quite a long period here where any sort of deal was really in doubt, because even going back to trying to remember like when the Z-Bin report like started initially. It might have been like July, maybe August. It was a while ago, a couple of months ago. There was interest from Houston-based real estate investor in Lee Z-Bin, but that deal kind of fell through, and it left a lot of people wondering, like, okay, well, what is going on with the Houston Outlaws? And the whole reason that this sale was needing to be made was because the Immortals Gaming Club, they already have the Valiant. You can't own two franchises in the Overwatch League. So Immortals needed to sell the Outlaws franchise, and the deal is penned. It's a done deal at this point, and the franchise has been sold to Beasley Media Group. So this is actually Beasley's second venture into esports. I know earlier this year they had also invested in Renegades, and this was back in April. And, I feel like at this point, this has just been a giant sigh of relief for anyone involved in that organization, because, at some point, there was just so much uncertainty. Like, you really weren't hearing anything out of the Outlaws camp. They really weren't making any sort of moves at the time. Now, granted, we have seen, they're going out, they got Blase, they got Hydration. They've also made a couple of other signings, which we'll definitely be talking about here in just a little bit, which I'm pretty excited about, because they did address one of the key issues that was still kind of lingering within the team. But, looking at this, we can finally start to see the bigger picture, and, I thought it was interesting. I was looking at this group with Beasley, and, I know they operate, Checkpoint XP, they do an esports radio show, you have an Overwatch podcast in itself actually on that station, Low Team Damage, were a pretty frequent releases, which I was happy to see. So it's kind of weird seeing this connection. So now we have an Overwatch podcast, and then they're owned by this company, and now they own the Houston Outlaws. So then it's cool to see how this just came to be. And I know they did interviews along with this, try to get to know the investors and everything like that. But for now, we can finally move forward with the Outlaws. They can address the issues that they still had kind of lingering on the team, which they have at this point. But now it just feels like that weight has kind of been lifted off their shoulders, and they can finally push forward to focus on the 2020 season and just tackling some of the other problems that could surface with all the travel and everything that comes along with the format changes that we'll be seeing.
Yeah, the Outlaws have money. That's the end of the. They have money now. They can make trades. They can do what they want. They have so much now that they just have a support staff that has money. I think this is a huge deal for Outlaws. I thought it was funny because I was looking at Beasley Media Group, and I was looking at all their stations that they own, and none of them are in Texas. So they're not really from Houston Outlaws. I think they just wanted representation from esports. I think that's really cool. Overall, I really like this offer, but this sale. So I really hope that they keep going. I hope they don't go bankrupt like the last one, and we'll see where they go from there. Really.
Yeah, I feel like the real kicker with this deal is looking back, there's a certain personality who really dogged on the Outlaws in regards to the casters. That being Monte Cristo, who happened to, kind of have ownership in Renegades at one point. So, everything's kind of come full circle. So I'm curious to see what his take is going to be on the ownership group moving into the 2020 season, and seeing if anything sparks kind of from that. But it's just, I know a lot of Outlaws fans out there are going to be happy about the deal finally being made, and they have more reason to be excited with some of the other roster changes that they have made, which we'll get into here in just a little bit. So a couple other tidbits from this past week. We have an update on the Hunters coaching staff. As of right now, they do not have a head coach because RUI has decided to basically put his coaching career on hold, and this is due to some health issues that have resurfaced. So RUI, he'd coached the Hunters in the 2019 season. Before that, he was with the Shanghai Dragons during the inaugural season. And even in the first season of the Overwatch League, he had to leave the team during the mid-season. And that was also due to health concerns on his front. But he's still been keeping busy. Like, he's been coaching the Chinese World Cup team, who back-to-back, won silver medals in the World Cup, so they're still looking pretty good. But, they lost to South Korea and the United States these past 2 years, but all in all, solid showings for them on that front. And, after that grueling run, he basically decided to just, focus on his health at this point. Now, it's important to note that with the league kind of moving into, that global infrastructure with the introduction of, traveling, having home and away, and, what that's going to mean in regards to taking, like, a mental toll on people, as well as physical. Like, RUI basically, knew, okay, that's just going to be too much for my body to handle, so this is actually the first change in regards to the personnel that we have seen from the Chengdu Hunters at this point. Since that team's inception. And, it's... RUI has definitely been someone who might get discredited more than he should, and a lot of that was just due to his association with the Dragons during the inaugural season, and all of that, but, that storyline's been beaten to death at this point. But his work with the Hunters, and just that organization as a whole, when we saw all these Chinese teams coming into the scene, we knew, okay, China kind of has their own flair. They have their own way of doing things, and no team has really embodied that more than the Hunters, because, they had Amin, who, they still have him, who just did his own thing, at any given time. Really no other tank was primarily running a Wrecking Ball throughout the entirety of the season. They were running a lot of DPS comps early, as opposed to what some of the other teams were doing. So they just have their own flair of doing things, and a lot of that just stems from the coach decisions that were made by RUI. So I hate to see, changes like this happen, but it's for, the betterment of his health in the long run. But, we'll see whether or not in the future maybe he'll look into remote coaching, because I know there are coaches within the league that do that. One of which I'll talk about later tonight in regards to the Philadelphia Fusion. But you hate to see things like this happen, but, it's just a matter of who is going to step up at this point, or are they going to go out and seek someone to fill that position from outside the organization?
Mm-hmm. So this is a huge hit for Chengdu Hunters. I believe RUI saved their season last year. I remember, was it Jane who was talking about when he was facing against Team Canada? When he was with Team Canada facing against China for, they're going on to the semifinals, and he was just talking about they watched us all night and just countered us the whole time. Mm-hmm. And that was all RUI's coaching. He brought him into, was it the 12th spot into the play-ins? Right. Which this team was supposed to be terrible.
They were
memed. They also didn't have a main tank for two stages? They didn't bring in their main tank for they just brought in a Mang who just played ball, and they worked with it because RUI just coached him into it. I really hope they find someone who can replace his leadership, because without it, I really don't see this team going far.
Now, it is worth noting that this is a team that hasn't really seen too many changes. All of them were still under contract on 2-year contracts, so that roster is basically still intact, so we'll see whether or not that success is going to be able to carry over going into the 2020 season. It's definitely a storyline to keep an eye on, but we'll update you if we do see any new coaches entering the fray for the Hunters moving forward. But outside of that, we do have an update on the Seoul Dynasty, who have opted to retire Ryu Jaehan's number. So, this is a way of just honoring Jaehan's devotion to the team. This is something that we see a lot in traditional sports. Really not so much in esports as of yet. I don't really follow enough esports outside of Overwatch to know, if this is something that's happened on multiple occasions or not. But you had the Dynasty Chief Operations Officer Arnold Tur promising to basically, whenever Jaehan decides to retire, which he hoped isn't anytime soon, they'll have, an official ceremony. And, I'm sure they're going to have, one of Jaehan's jerseys, mounted on a wall in, the Genji headquarters or something. I don't know where they're going to go on that front. But his tenure preceded the Overwatch League when he was on, Lunatic High, dating back to, the Apex days. Along with some other Dynasty members, like Zunba, Miro, Toby, and Guido. And it is worth noting, Jaehan is listed as a free agent. There have been a lot of rumors in regards to where he's going, because it does not seem like he's going to be re-signing with the Dynasty, even though Toby did re-sign. And, Jaehan has been linked to the Vancouver Titans. So that's not official yet. We've seen, Halo of Thoughts reporting on it, or, just citing sources that deal is done, along with another one in regards to Fisher basically coming out of retirement to compete again with the Titans. And there's kind of, a lot of, rumors kind of circling around other movements on that front, which would be an absolute gamble for a team like the Titans. But what are your thoughts behind the idea of actually retiring an esports jersey? Because when you think about it, we're not really seeing the storied careers as much in esports, just because the career length or longevity is a lot shorter when you compare it to traditional sports. So, you don't have someone playing for the same team for, 6+ years like we see in, the NBA or the NFL.
Right. I really like this decision. I think Ryu Jaehan is he's an absolute legend. And with Overwatch League, they really just base a lot of stuff off of traditional leagues like NFL, NBA. So I really like that they're also putting this in here, because Ryu Jaehan was the heart of the team for those past 2 seasons. So I really believe that this is the right move for a team like Seoul, and I really hope more teams follow in the path.
Yeah, there's only a couple of names that I could think of that I could see kind of going down the same path. Jonak would probably be a standout one. Same with maybe Sinatra I could see at that point. But I'm pretty sure they still have years in regards to their esports career. Hopefully it won't be a situation like Rise and someone decides to retire at 18 or anything like that.
Right. I was thinking more along the line of someone like Siegel and maybe DeFran, or these absolute legends of the game get their the number retired, and this guy was on our team. This was his number. Just basically just creating a tradition. It's these people were on our team. These are the people that you should look up to. These are the people that, when you think of our name, these people should be accompanied with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I really see with the retired numbers.
Yeah, so basically the cornerstones of the franchise.
Exactly.
Let's see, I'm just reading chat really quick. Delta saying, profit for London even though he got traded. See, that's the thing, it's hard to say on that front. 2 years. I mean, it did predate the Overwatch League too, though. I don't. I feel like it's gonna be more just a case-by-case basis with things like jersey retirements at this point. But knowing Seoul, I would not be surprised if they eventually do the same thing for Toby, because like the two are synonymous with one another. Like I can't imagine them doing it for Jhon and then not Toby, since they were always a duo together on that support line, even dating back to Lunatic High. But moving into our main discussion, Anura, we gotta talk about all of the roster changes that we have seen from this past week. And, to tie in with what we had just mentioned, let's start with the Vancouver Titans. So, Vancouver, they went out and they have released 3 different players this past week, one of which has already found a new home. We'll have more on that later. But the Titans, they went out and they released Tizzy, Repel, and most recently, earlier today, they released Hureg. Now, Hureg did mention in his LFT post that he is looking to move into coaching, so that would be a change of pace for him. And as we mentioned, like the rumor mill currently has Fisher and Jhon signing with the Titans, but there's a lot of other things kind of like in between the cracks about like potentially even the Titans getting rid of Bumper, maybe trying to go all in on the Fisher experiment, see how that works. But my biggest thing right now is it's just like, okay, Hureg is moving into a coaching role. So is that going to completely negate the force of Hureg? Is he not going to give a team like that power buff from being on the bench? Because it seems like any time he's on the team and he's not seeing playtime, that team just levels up and ends up winning championships, and it's happened time and time again throughout his career. I don't know if it's going to have the same effect in a coaching role, but there have been, former pro players that have transitioned into coaching. Kuki definitely comes to mind with his work over in Korea Contenders, but doesn't always work out. Like, there's situations where it just completely blows up in their face. But it's a different direction that he is willing to take. But I still don't know how to process the whole Fisher and Jhon rumors as of yet. And I'm sure it's going to be the same case whenever the pen is put to paper on those contracts, because, Fisher is a gamble, and he has been basically with every time he's landed on a team up to this point.
Right. So the Vancouver Titans, I don't know what they're doing right now. What they've done so far is just trim out the fat. Both Tizzy was playing in the playoffs, but the other two, Repel and Hureg, they really didn't see a lot of time. Repel has been known as a good player, and I think Hureg just wanted to find something different. I think coaching would be a great spot for him. I'm pretty sure he's probably already been doing it for a while now, with being on the bench for so long on 2 different teams. So I really, later the rumors, I don't know where Vancouver's going. I felt like they had a good path with we were forming a runaway, but now it looks like they're kind of steering off that path. But with these releases, they're completely understandable. I hope Tizzy finds a team, because he deserves a starting spot somewhere. I really hope he finds one. And then, but both Repel and Hureg, Repel we'll hear about later, but Hureg, I really hope he finds somewhere that he can just be happy and enjoy it. And hopefully the force of Hureg will follow him.
We can only hope. So moving into London, a couple of more releases. London is going to be a completely new team at this point. So the Spitfire, they went out and they released both Quatermain as well as Bedosian. So at this point, we have no Spitfire player that was on the roster during the inaugural season. So that's a huge thing. There has been a lot of, reports about potential sign-ins. I know a couple of the names off the top of my head. That included Genji, DPS player Glister, was kind of teased. Same with LGE, he was maintained JMac. They've also teased Shui from Runaway, who is, a DPS player. Potentially even getting Highly from the Dynasty as a flex support. And then there was also like a really bizarre tease for a very unknown player from one of Genji's sister teams? I don't know what I should call it, because they're Gen B, and I know they have multiple teams, but they teased the signing of a main support in Sanguinar, who I know absolutely nothing about. But as of right now, you're basically looking at Krillin for the Spitfire, and like, I don't know if there's any other pieces outside of that, but it's just like, from the outside looking in, you're looking at this team, and you don't know what you should set your expectations to be outside of thinking, this very well could be a team that is going to be working from the ground floor up. Maybe Highly will, still continue to get the nod. Like, at some point, you have to see if this Krillin payoff is actually going to work, because he hasn't really been seeing a ton of opportunities. But it just seems like right now, Spitfire don't have an identity at this point, and now you're going to bring in like this hodgepodge of different players from different organizations, different teams. Granted, some of them are owned by, the same investors, especially when it comes to the Dynasty front, but the synergy just is not going to be there because they haven't really played together at any given point, either on the path to pro or even in the Overwatch League.
Yeah, these London like drops and pickups are like the wildest thing we've this off season. I don't think anyone saw it coming until the Prophet and Gesture Bomb that happened with was it Wolf? Yeah, Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of excited to see this team. I've always liked the idea of like London finding their own version of Jonak, which is just Krillin just out of nowhere, and then just like raising him. Like, he worked under Bedosin before, and now he has a chance to start. I know the highly ad might stop that, but I there's rumors of him not able to get offers. Like, London would not offer Krillin to anyone. So I really think they have high hopes for him. I'm just excited to see how well this team does. I have no idea how well they're gonna do. I have faith in their coaching staff that they know what they're doing, but we'll see. It's really just a question mark.
Yeah, it's really hard to grade them when they don't have really any pieces as of yet. So like, if people were to do like preseason rankings, they could end up being this year's Chandu Hunters, where everyone's going to expect them to kind of be bottom of the barrel, but they'll find a way to somehow squeeze their way into the play-ins at that 12th spot. But we'll have to see when these deals are done. I am happy to see Glister getting promoted to the Overwatch League. But man, I would have preferred to see him on the Dynasty. But I'll be happy nonetheless to see him seeing some play. So moving into LA, we got a couple of changes both on the Valiant and the Gladiators front. So let's start with the Valiant, who really not a whole lot. Obviously, the deal with Immortal selling the Outlaws is a done deal at this point. But the Valiant did release another player. This time, it is Fact Fiction, who, for whatever reason, cannot seem to catch a break in regards to the Overwatch League. It really pains me, because it seems like anytime he's getting picked up, we see improvement on the team that signs him.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to be destined to become another mid-season sign-in again. And I hate to see that. Like, I want to see him get in the nod. There are still teams out there that do need to address issues on their front lines. And at this point, like, Fax really solidified himself as a starter in the Overwatch League. And I don't know if it's a money thing. Obviously, there's been a lot of, rumors about Valiant and with the COD League happening, and I'm kind of going budget with their Overwatch League team, which, based on all of the movement that we have seen and just seeing some of the other signings they've made, it definitely kind of leads into that. But, could we see him resurface on, a team like Houston? Maybe, but it just seems like at the end of the day, every time you think that Fact Fiction is going to get his big break, the team just cuts him loose. And it's a never-ending cycle, it seems like. And I hate to see that to someone that is that talented, that has been around the scene for so long at this point.
Right. I feel like him and Tizzy are like in the same boat, as they are solid main tanks. They're nothing special, but they're solid main tanks where they can carry a team into winning spots because they will do their job. So mid-season signings are like perfect for these kind of players. But the problem is like every single time teams are gonna try to look for the better main tank, because main tank's just such an important place into the Overwatch League. But I thought it was really interesting that Valiant didn't pick him back up, especially with like McGravy, who was his partner in Mayhem Academy, and he picked up as well. And they also went with Dreamer, which is just an unknown. I'm surprised they didn't go for two main tanks in the Valiant, and had Fact, who has had history with McGravy and could probably play well with McGravy. Wait, McGravy was MD. Oh, anyway, they weren't together in Mayhem Academy, but either way, I really think that they had history together. I didn't see a reason why they dropped Fact Fiction unless he just didn't do well in tryouts.
All right, well, let's talk about their counterparts in the LA Gladiators. So actually quite a bit going on in the Gladiators camp. So for starters, they did add a new coach to their coaching staff. So they have turned to Talon Esports head coach Face. So really excited to see any Talon cards entering the Overwatch League, because they've really been at the forefront in their respective region and contenders. They've also brought back Bishu to the Gladiators. Probably not a high chance of him starting over Space at this point. So it's a feel good story, and Bishu is a really good spokesperson for that franchise. So he'll probably fill that role and just be kind of like in a similar position as Mickey in regards to Dallas in this case. But the other signings that they made were with Paintbrush and Mirror, who has kind of been one of the stand-up DPS players on a lot of these middle-of-the-road teams. But at the end of the day, yes, the Gladiators, they made a ton of movements. They've offset a lot of pieces. They shipped off some of the bigger names out there. And now we're kind of entering this bit of unknown about okay, what's the full vision of this DPS line going to end up being? Is Birdring going to be the star that he was kind of expected to be when he entered the Overwatch League, but he hasn't quite hit that level or met the expectations that have been put upon him? And a lot of that was to an extent, actually Prophet just kind of dogging on him and just outshining him every step of the way. But Birdring has been very inconsistent since the get-go. So it's going to be kind of different to see him kind of get pushed back as the carry DPS, and I don't know if he's going to be able to fit that role on the Gladiators in this upcoming season. So we expect to see some more firepower getting added to the DPS line, but I do like the addition of Paintbrush, even if it is, a backup role. But it does lead you to question what's the landscape really gonna look like on the teams when it comes to travel? Are we gonna have set rosters that we'll send 8 players out when we're actually traveling, we'll keep the others behind? Or are they going to fly everyone out? We might just have 6 people that end up staying, in the U.S. side, and then you have the other 6 players venturing out in travel weeks. We don't know how teams are going to tackle that to try to kind of like offset whatever issues might surface with like the mental and physical toll with traveling. But right now, like the Gladiators, the DPS line is the biggest question. I feel like everywhere else, you're probably feeling pretty good. And, potentially that might even lessen the hole that could be with the DPS. Like, if they have a strength up front and are able to create the space needed, maybe that's going to be enough for the DPS line to really pop off at that point. Maybe they don't even need that star-studded DPS to kind of like add into the rotation.
Right. With the Gladiators, I really like the signing. I really do think they're gonna go for the 12-man. I think they're gonna go with 12-man roster at the end of the day, or at least 10. So I think they have some more signings to come. But I feel like with Bird Ring, the I think Sideshow said this earlier, which was that on his previous team, was it Kongdu Panthera? He was the carry DPS. He got all the support, and on London it was Profit. So hopefully that once he gets support, he can go back to where he was. But we'll have to see with that later. I really like the Mirror sign up. I think he needs a. I think he's a great talent who could use a lot of coaching, which I think DPA will put in fully. And then what I thought was interesting was that the paintbrush and Bishu pickups were both for players like Big Goose and Space, who really I don't see them getting like a starting position over either of those players. But on the other hand, is scrim partners. I think these guys are really good. I think they're very vocal players. I think they can really work well with the Gladiators and their future. So overall I think Gladiators are really going for a risk reward kind of team right now, where it's like high highs and probably low lows this season. But we'll have to see with like the season going forward.
Yeah, I will say with the Paintbrush sign-in, something that hasn't really been noted as much as it probably should be, is that Paintbrush was the in-game leader when he was on Revival, which is a role that Big Goose also fills. So, like, no matter who they're subbing in or subbing out, you're going to have someone that's very vocal on that main support role for that team, which is going to be a huge asset, no matter what at this point. But we'll see if Bird Ring is gonna answer the call at this point to kind of return to form or be that carry DPS, and kind of not. I feel like with London, I don't want to say he was complacent, but it did feel kind of just more lackadaisical because like he didn't need to do as much because Profit was usually the one kind of like holding all the weight on that team with that duo. So we'll see how he does in a different environment moving forward with the Gladiators. But moving on to the Dallas Fuel, pretty big signing actually out of Contenders Korea, and they've gone out and they've signed Element Mystic DPS Doha. So this was the complimentary DPS to Sparkle, who of course was probably one of the bigger gets in the offseason, with Element Mystic parts, signing with the Paris Eternal. And for Dallas, there's been a lot of question about flexibility on that DPS line, and now you have Decay, you have Doha, and now it just seems like that kind of shores up that area for Dallas moving forward. It's just a matter of, is Decay going to live up to the expectations that were set on him, because he did really spark a lot of bidden wars, going into this prior season. But it does kind of like make you wonder, like, okay, what's going to be happening with all these other DPS that Dallas has? Like, we have Zachary, they have AKM, they have others outside of that. They don't play. They have Taimu. How could I forget Taimu? Maybe we'll see the return of Tankmu at some point. You never know. Crazier things have happened, but it feels like now we are finally going to get to see a more potent duo on the DPS line for Dallas. And I know I know like Spider's really excited to see how this is going to shake up. But it's starting to feel like I'm not gonna dread watching Dallas as much going into this next year.
Right. So the DPS duo not duo, but DPS on Dallas has always been just like the weakest. Not always, but season 2 was like the weakest part of their. I think since they lost Effect, which was their main carry. I really think that's been the weakest part of them. And with the signing of um, of Doa, I really think they found a good support DPS to go with Effect to be not Effect. Decay to be the star. Decay will definitely probably take most of the support, while Doha will, just like he probably did with Element Mystic DPS. I forgot his name. But he'll probably be a support DPS as well. And I really like this duo. I think they just completely flip from their supports probably being the strongest, or tanks being the strongest, to their DPS being the strongest on that team. So I really like this pickup.
Yeah, and we'll see whether or not Arrow can, continue to improve after the U.S. show-in at the World Cup. But potential issues maybe in regards to communication on the DPS line. We'll see if that surfaces moving forward. But Dallas seems to. Like, I don't know if they're done with their sign-ins, but I feel like right now they're in a pretty good spot. But it would just be. I don't know if they keep 5 DPS. Maybe they try to buy someone out of their contract. That remains to be seen. But Dallas, out of the get-go, really went in with, the lengthier contracts in regards to their sign-ins at this point. So we'll see if anything comes from that moving forward. But moving into Atlanta, we got a couple of sign-ins out of the Path to Pro scene, as they have signed both Edison and Sharp, both DPS players. And I have to say, I'm really excited for Edison in particular, because this is a guy who, at a very young age, was, one of the Korean prodigies. And he kind of flew under the radar compared to some of the other DPS, primarily because he wasn't on one of the top Korean teams. He wasn't on, a team like Runaway. He wasn't on Element Mystic. He was on GC Busan Wave, who have been kind of all over the place from season to season. But you have Atlanta now, who have Edison and Airster. And what's crazy about this duo in particular is you have 2 players who are primarily known for either playing projectile or hit scan. But both of them have deep hero pools that can lead into them playing the other role. So it just kind of has, this Rubik's Cube effect where, you can just, you can twist it, you can turn it whichever way, and they'll be able to cover each other's role. They can do their own thing. They can just do basically whatever needs to be done. And it just brings so much more flexibility to this DPS line now. And then you add on Sharp, who's really been a standout performer here as of late, too. And I'm feeling really good about Atlanta's DPS moving forward. So, it's a huge opportunity for these players coming out of contenders. Edison, I feel like, is probably going to be somebody that's going to just come in, really pop off. And, I don't think DPS was ever an issue on the team. But there's just so much young talent. And the DPS talent, especially in contenders, is so deep. And I love seeing these younger kids getting the opportunity, and Edison's really going to be someone to keep an eye out for. He'd be my early frontrunner. If I was to pick a rookie of the year out of the gate, Edison would be the guy that I would be looking
at. Yeah, so I really like this Atlanta signing. I think they remind me a lot of last year's Shock, where they look stacked. They just look absolutely stacked coming into the season. They have, I think they have a full roster now, except for main support, right? Yeah, except for main support, and they have 5 DPS just like Shock. The only questions we have is maybe Dogman, but just like Super last season, I think Dogman can show up, especially with a team like this. I really do expect a lot from this team. I could see them really just being a top 2 or 3 team with this roster. It's insane. It's an absolutely insane roster.
So the next two teams that I want to talk about, I'm going to tie together because it revolves around one player for both teams, being the only movement that we have seen. So the Seoul Dynasty have released Fleta, and Fleta has gone on to sign with the Shanghai Dragons. Now, Dragons this past year, they were running a lot of like triple DPS compositions with the implementation of 222 going into stage 4. This is a DPS core that really kind of saw some drastic fall off at this point. So you have Fleta being situated in here, you're getting added to DM, to Dean, and we'll see how that's going to pan out. But, Fleta is a very big name, and, it's just... I feel like on the Dynasty, he didn't quite live up to the expectations, but you had other people on the Dynasty that were able to step up. So hopefully Fleta is going to be the answer that the Dragons need to have better sustainability in regards to 222 on the DPS line. But, across the gate, like, the Dragons, there's, still a bit of unknown, like, what's going to happen at main tank? How are they going to fare without Gamsu on the front line? There's still, like, the off-tank issue, too, on this team, where they didn't really have someone who was just a constant starter. And then even when they did have someone that was, like, Envy, they weren't really, like, a standout performer on the off-tank position either. So there's still a lot of questions that need to be addressed on the Dragons roster. But, I'm glad to see Fleta still within the league, because part of me was a little bit concerned just knowing that, there are really big names out there that were on the market that maybe have seen their stock kind of fall going into this new season.
Right. So the Dragons, I'm so confused on what to think about them. Because they barely made it into the play-ins. They barely made it. And I don't know how much Fleta can do for them, because I feel like their DPS also carried last season. I really hope they show more. There's more signings later, and there's been rumors of more signings, but I really, unless they get just a good coaching staff, I don't know what to think about this team, even with a legend as Fleta is. I'm very iffy about this team. It's the best way to put it. But I really wanted to see Seoul have Fleta, because I really wanted that duo of Prophet Fleta. But now that's off the table, so we'll have to see what happens next.
Yeah, probably going to mean that we'll see Fitz and Prophet being the primary duo for the Dynasty going into the 2020 season, or who knows? Like maybe they'll go out and they'll pick up another DPS. But we know it's not going to be Glister. We're not going to see a call up on that front, unfortunately. But moving on to the Philadelphia Fusion, really not a whole lot going on with them. They did have a couple of changes in regards to their coaching staff. So they did bring back Christopher as an assistant coach, and then they also went out and they added both Moby Dick and Seda to the coaching staff. So, Seda, very well-respected coach, probably still going to be remote coaching in regards to, being in Europe, because I know he does have a fear of flying. I wonder how common that is within the Overwatch League. I know we do see it quite often in regards to the Path to Pro. I'm not so much sure on, like, the Tier 1 scene in particular. But with Moby, like, that was a pretty quick turnaround from releasing it and signed, so I can't really say too much on that. But, it's just... Philly right now, I feel like still, at the end of the day, yes, their coaching staff is looking absolutely stellar. But at the end of the day, there's still the question mark about the main tank position. And whether or not anything is going to be done about that, or if it's just off limits because of Carpe getting re-signed for 3 years, and we know how close he is with Sato. Like, is this team just doomed just because of the main tank position moving forward? We'll have to wait and see, but I know a lot of people are still like, you gotta do something, like...
Right. Well, Tizzy and Fact Fiction are both on the market, so I really hope that Fusion at least sees that and it's like maybe gives one of them a tryout, because both these players could at least show consistency at that basis. I know a lot of people like Sato because of his highs, but his lows are really low. And I overall, I think Fusion's just bolstered their coaching staff, which is exactly what they probably need at this point. And then the resign of Christopher, I really like. I feel like he was like not only a coach but like a personality for them. So I really like that resign. I think Fusion is really looking to be pretty good later on this season. We'll see how far they go.
All right, so moving on to the Guangzhou Charge, a couple different signings here. So they went out and they picked up Kron, Ouya, as well as Neptuno. So unfortunately, we're not going to get to see the Fraggy Neptuno reunion on the Charge. That's not happening since they get rid of Fraggy here prior to this past week. Ouya is actually like the first Chinese contenders pickup we've seen during the offseason. And that is actually a call-up from their academy team from the one winner .gza, which is Guangzhou Academy. So he is a flex support. And then, Kron, like, I've seen him primarily on, like, Sari and Roadhog. I don't know how he is as much on, say, like, Diva or some of the other off-tanks. But, the loss of Hotba is definitely something that could might be pretty hard to replace, knowing the amount of flexibility he had like even going into 2-2-2, where we're not seeing him flex on 2 Tracer or anything like that. So the Kron pickup is definitely going to be something I'm going to keep a closer eye on, just because that's bigger shoes to fill on that front. But I am happy to see Neptuno getting picked up. Like, it seemed like a pretty surefire deal, like he was gonna get signed. I honestly would have preferred to see Houston being the destination for Neptuno. I felt like that probably would have made more sense on that front. But at this point, that's not going to be the case for Houston. So we'll see if they're going to make any moves on that regard.
Right. I like all these signings. I think Krong's a great player. I always love when a tier 2 sister team brings out their players with WYA or Ouya. And then Neptuno, his Mercy's insane. And his Lucio's not bad either. And he just seems like he's a leader. And I feel like with a young team like they are, a leader like that could really go far. These signings really just make them look better. I was very skeptical about Charge going to next year because they had a lot of lows from the previous season. But with these signings, you really can't argue about how good this team could be. They could be really at least I'd say play-ins at least. I like the Charge right now. I think they're going to be really strong.
Yeah, so they basically bring that veteran experience with Neptuno now that Fraggy and Bishu were released from this organization. So probably going to fill a similar void in regards to the Charge for them in 2020. But, speaking of the Charge, since we know, Hoppa is no longer with that franchise, he did get picked up by the New York Excelsior. So Hoppa is your Meko replacement, and Meko did sign elsewhere, which we'll talk about here in just a minute or two. And, for me, I'd be happy wherever Hoppa ended up. When you look at Meko, Meko's kind of been Mr. Consistency, at least on the off-tank position. But Hotba has more flexibility, but I feel like this is a downgrade if we're just talking about Diva specifically. But I do feel like Hotba does offer more in regards to the other off tanks. Probably more so on Roadhog as opposed to some of the other options that are out there. But Hoppa does have that extra flexibility where if we do see role changes happen, he would be the guy to do it on this team. And Meko didn't really offer that or really excel in that type of role. So I'm curious to see if we're going to see any of that moving forward. Just, kind of throw people off their game when they're going up against New York, because we're still waiting to see them really break out and make a deeper run in the playoffs. But I like the sign in, but it's just a matter of what off tank is going to be meta come the start of the 2020 season, because that might be a potential weak spot if it is a Diva specifically or the return of Dive. But I feel like no matter what, the tank line isn't necessarily going to be a weak spot on this team. Mono's been, holding things down on the front line. Hoppa should be a good addition on that front. But we're gonna have to wait and see, because, New York, they always get hyped up. They're a great run organization. We need to see the payoffs.
Right. The reason I like the signing is with BTR patch, everything's faster. Everything's faster. So I really think they're going for a more aggressive style. I think Hoppa would help with that a lot. I think they just got lucky, honestly, because I feel like they're going to sign Hoppa anyway. But we don't know their head coach. We don't know New York's head coach right now, right? Pretty sure we don't know. But whoever that is, I feel like they're going to change up the play style into a more aggressive, because we saw the top two teams be a more aggressive team. I think Hoppa will help a lot with that. As well as I think he's a good replacement, because he's been in the league for so many years and just been on top teams, just helping them out. I like this pickup a lot from New York, but I don't see them changing as in improving or getting worse. I think this is very lateral instead of vertical, as in getting a better player.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a change of styles, honestly.
Yeah, to be honest, when you look at the market, it would be very hard to actually improve at that position.
Right, exactly. So I really think Haba probably just killed it in whatever they had for trials, and they're gonna bring a different style to it.
Right, so that does leave us with one other team, that being the Houston Outlaws, who have made 2 new additions to this team, both of which are Korean players. So they went out and they signed Repel, formerly Vancouver Titans, and then they also signed Meko, formerly New York Excelsior. So, going into the offseason, obviously the biggest story outside of whether or not the sale is actually going to happen with this franchise was what the F is going on with the off-tank position on this team. Then they go out, they trade for Blase, they get hydration, and then everyone's still like, okay, these are fine sign-ins.
3 off-tanks?
But it doesn't address the issue. So it's like, okay, well, we've seen Blase fill in his off-tank. We know Hydration can play a lot of off-tanks as well. We've seen that happen. But then you have, 5 off-tank options, and everyone's just like... But they're not actual off-tanks. They might excel at, one hero in particular, but, you can't just keep rotating people in and out like that. That just doesn't quite work. So everyone's just, sitting there. Being okay, any day now, guys, and then we see them add in some other components, and just well, still not addressing this, huh? And sure enough, now they go out, they get Meko, and I know there was a little bit of concern with Meko, specifically when it came to the contract side of things. I know on Plat Chat, I think Bram was hinting at maybe he was asking for too much money, maybe he overvalued his worth, and We saw a lot of these other teams signing people at that position, potentially for cheaper, and maybe like there was concern with Meko potentially like pricing himself out of a job. So, this is why I wish like we knew contract statuses or the cost of contracts to see what the value was at for Meko specifically. So I don't know if he took a pay cut. I don't know if he was asking for like astronomical numbers in regards to him getting picked up by a team. So that's my biggest question. But without a doubt, Meko is going to be a massive sign-in. One of the bigger signs that we have seen during this offseason. And for me, it's just a matter of how big of a challenge is it going to be for Meko to play on a mixed roster at this point? Now, Houston has always kind of had, like, that Korean player on their roster. Arhan basically had signed with this team, really not knowing any English, and sure, he didn't really see a ton of playtime on stage, but they bring in, Harsha as the new head coach. So, he just dealt with the full Korean roster in regards to Vancouver Titans this past season. So I don't feel like there's going to be, like, a huge amount of issues under the surface with these sign-ins. But, on top of addressing, the off-tank position on this team, there's also potential, like, maybe we'll start to see more of an even split at the flex support. Because I know a lot of people like to dog on Raucus at times. Some more so than others. But Rappel never really got a ton of opportunities when he was playing elsewhere, and, this might be a better landing spot for him. So, all in all, like, I actually really like both of these sign-ins, and for the Outlaws, they actually have a consistent off-tank that they can rely on, which is going to be absolutely massive for this team. So we'll see whether or not we'll see Buma, like, really start to pop off now, like he used to.
Yeah, this is good. Because everyone was complaining about two spots in the Houston Outlaws, and that was literally the flex support and the off tank. And with these two signings, they first break into a mixed roster instead of being Western plus Arhan. But they also they signed two really talented, high skilled players that could really help this team and boost them to where they need to be. I think Raucus was going to make a return this next season with the players they already signed. But I feel like this is really good. I think Raucus would not be a bad bench player or like player that they can put in as a say if they're doing intern scrims or whatever. I think he'd be perfect for that. And he might get some play time later on because I feel like they have an inkling of switching players for certain metas. So we'll see how it goes for them. But I really like these Houston Outlaws signings, and I hope they're actually good this season. Maybe they'll make it to play-ins.
All I know is the battle for Texas is gonna be completely different this year, especially with all of the moving pieces that we have seen. Looking at some of the talk behind the Outlaws, though, it does seem like Flame was basically saying, like, okay, like, this is gonna be your team. Like, we're not expecting to make any other sign-ins, so whoever's on the roster at this point seems to be what they will be moving with going into the 2020 season. So, right now it's looking like they're not gonna make an addition in regards to adding support versatility on the main support role, which at this point might be what people would consider the weak spot on this roster. But, getting Meko, definitely the biggest get that they could get at that position during the offseason. So we cannot undersell just the magnitude of that just individual sign. And so I cannot wait to see how that's going to shake up. Hopefully there won't be any communication issues, but it will be, a challenge for Meko to, come into a completely new environment and see how he flourishes here. Hopefully we won't see a downgrade of play on his front, but, He's been Mr. Consistency since day one at the off-tank position, and I feel like this is really going to uplift the Outlaws in the 2020 season. But, for now, we're at this point where all of the teams need to have at least 8 players under contract, and we haven't seen all of the teams actually announce their team options. There's a lot of question marks on that front. So what we'll probably end up doing is next week we'll probably take a closer look at what's actually known contract-wise, who's actually signed, who hasn't officially been brought on to some of these teams as of yet, because I know there's still a ton of people on some teams more so than others that we're still kind of in the in the weeds about. It's kind of frustrating, not knowing who has actually gotten picked up for the 2020 season at this point. It's almost like there's a bit of transparency issues again.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens on that front. But I do want to update you guys on plans for preview episodes, and this is gonna be down the road a little bit. But leading into the 2020 season, we are planning on breaking down episodes. We'll do panels for the weeks leading up to the season launch, which is in February. So this will be happening throughout January, where we'll go division by division. We'll bring in a couple of different content creators each week. We'll break down each team, share our thoughts on the changes that were made during the offseason, storylines to follow, things like that, and also do predictions on where we expect to see them in regards to power rankings when all is said and done. So that's a little peer into the future. We'll get all the details hammered out here probably within the next week or two. Obviously, things are kind of going to be iffy with, Thanksgiving coming up here in the next week. But we're looking forward to bringing back panels for, kind of some off-season talk again, instead of mid-season this time. But we'll probably try to do something at the All-Star break on that front as well. But with that being said, let's go ahead and let's wrap up the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, obviously the best thing to do is to head over to your favorite podcatcher, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, and, if it's on iTunes or whatever, we should be able to see it and we'll read it on the show. If you would like to find additional Overwatch-related content, we do have our podcast directory, that being Overwatch Recall. Then every Sunday, sometimes Monday, when I lose track of time, like this week, we do the Week the Recall, which is a episodic listen of all the prior week's podcast episodes. So get caught up on the latest on Twitter at OW Recall. We do also have a Patreon page where you could support us further. We have tiers on at just $1 a month, so every little bit does help, and it goes towards, giveaways or the, podcast fees, all the good stuff for hosting. So visit our Patreon at patreon.com/OWL Network, and then you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons in Blazing Bob, Brendan, Josabal, Owl, and Kesha in helping our network grow. So before I go through all of the contact information, because there is a ton, we are a podcast network, Anura, I do want to thank you again for guesting on tonight's episode. So why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you over on social media.
You can just find me on Twitter. I'll be Anura _09, and I'll just be tweeting about anything related to Overwatch League and probably some other stuff just for fun. That's about it.
All right, so if you guys would like to contact us, you can do so a couple of different ways. We do have an email set up for our network that is at contact@owlnshow.com. Our website is at www.owlnshow.com. You can reach us on Twitter at owlnshow. Check out our YouTube. The channel is Overwatch League Network. We do have our Discord where you can chat us up, talk about the latest roster movements, all of that good stuff with our community at discord.me/OWLN show. And of course, we stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show, where we do currently Overwatch League Network Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, as well as our variety Overwatch show, Heroes Never Die, which airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. This week we'll definitely be talking about the PTR patch, now that we've had a little bit more time to kind of dive into that, because we did skip that since we had the Team Latvia head coach, GG Mentality, on that prior week. So definitely go check that out if you haven't yet. But if you would like to reach me personally, you can find me on Twitter at TumblyDrunkCTR, and I have been streaming on the regular here as of late on my primary Twitch account at twitch.tv/TumblyDrunk, where I have been either playing Overwatch, or more so as of late, Hearthstone Battlegrounds, which I've really just fallen in love with, even though, like, it's very RNG at times. So it's a good time. I had an absolutely ridiculous RNG streak for the first game that I played when Ro was kind of piloting me in Twitch chat, but definitely go back, check out that VOD and just see the stupid like board that we had that just completely obliterated everyone. But with that, guys, you have been listening to Overwatch League Network. This has been episode 103. I've been your host, Simply Drunk, joined this week by Anura, and we hope to see you guys back on Wednesday for our next episode of Heroes Never Die. Take care, and have a good night.